he looked at me and he really said, I have to save as many babies as I can before I die. And we're seeing reductions in birth rates in many countries, including the US. So
I heard you say before that you guys are not a company with a mission, but a mission with a company.
you know, people's biggest fear, maybe ours was childbirth,
Right.
but other people's, normal people's biggest fear is the exhaustion. And I think that is something that really can drive you when you are saving babies, innocent little babies. It's not just saving lives, but it's like the most delicate and precious and vulnerable lives.
I wanted to ask about legacy. You know, you're so embedded in this business. You've watched your parents grow from the DVDs and at-home 3 a.m. calls into this household name. Lexi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you so
Welcome
much.
to the Only Moms podcast. You're like my dream candidate. You know, everyone has these like celebrity influences. I'm like, oh my gosh, someone that is building a family business, you know, from the ground up.
It's rare these days. I watched a special years ago. I don't even know why I'm saying this, on like 60 Minutes or something, about the incidence of family businesses. And the example was Tabasco hot sauce.
Wow.
In Louisiana. And apparently they all have to be like cousins or second cousins to work there. And it's a whole thing. But they said only 10% of the family businesses survive. And of that 10%, only another like 1 or 2% of the second generation survive. So being the child of our founders and working together as a family is really more rare than I realized.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I knew it was rare and incredible because I'm like fangirl over here. But all right, so let's dive in with your incredible bio. I want to let our listeners know who you are, and then we'll get ripping and running. So today we have Lexie Montée Bush. And she is the marketing and strategy leader known for her expertise in brand building, global marketing and PR, business development, and sales. She is the vice president of marketing and communications at Happiest Baby, the maker of Snoo, the first robotic bassinet that calms crying and increases sleep, and helped scale from ideation through launch and into a successful global brand. Lexi previously founded HYPR, leading business development, marketing, and communications for clients across a number of industries. She is driven to make a meaningful impact personally, professionally, and across communities, and has guest lectured on purpose-driven leadership businesses, scaling $1 billion company, and cultivating serendipity at universities including NYU and USC. She has also spoken at conferences like the Next Web and TEDx, and appeared on podcasts such as the Retention Chronicles and Nessa Off Air about business, motherhood, and beyond. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Time, New York Times, Vogue, and more. She received her degrees in psychology and literature from Columbia University, where she later managed a social psychology research lab. Lexi is mom of a 2.5-year-old, Lola, and currently lives in Los Angeles.
Just moved here.
I was going to say, all of the research I had done on you were in New York.
Yeah.
So how was
15 years in New York. I grew up in LA, so it's home, but it's very different now. And coming to any place, new or old, doesn't matter if it was old, it's very different with kids.
Oh, a different you're in a different you're having a different vacation than everyone else, right? Like I actually went to Nashville with my business partner when we launched the market, and she was there with her boyfriend, and I brought my 2 sons. And she's like, yeah, we're at this place, and I said, I'm at a t-shirt shop. We are on different trips right now. This is a totally different experience.
But it's nice. It's really kid friendly here. There are a lot more families in New York City. I think, you know, we were really like it's an equalizing factor. It's a city.
Yeah.
So even the super affluent people might be the next door neighbor because they combined a bunch of apartments.
Yeah.
But when it snows, you're all stuck in the same space and you know, having that vertical space and height. So you have a lot of families around, but it's different. You're not like playing as much. You're not interacting. You're more saying hi in the elevator or scootering in the hallway.
Yeah.
But I've noticed here, I've seen my own child really flourish and like actually interact, and that's, I think, as we approach the age of 3 where they're no longer parallel playing, but it's definitely different. Like I'm 20 weeks pregnant, and so I recently cried and was like, I'm never going anywhere ever again, because you scroll Instagram and everyone's in like Capri on summer vacation drinking Negronis. And so I was thinking, like, I'm never, a baby and a toddler and a big job, and I'm just never leaving again. And all I was thinking at the moment was, it sounds hard to drive from the beach to West Hollywood to try a new restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, not doing that. Whereas, in your youth, you're like, let's go.
Anywhere.
All
the time. The amount of red-eye flights that I would take when I was young and then just like hop into the office.
Yeah.
Like, what was wrong with me?
No, or where it was amazing. I was just telling my marketing team is very young. And I was like, you should all have kids now, because when I was your age, I would red-eye from Coachella to work.
Right. You have the energy.
Yeah.
now.
And I'm like, I was fine.
Right.
Now I'm like, that's great for newborn times.
Yeah. Now I'm like, can my nanny make it in by 8?
Yeah.
So I can get 20 minutes of extra sleep,
Totally.
Before the day starts. I have like a super question to ask before we roll in that's very important to me personally that I hope our listeners will appreciate. But have you weaned Lola off the pacifier?
Yes, but
yeah, how'd it go?
It was super easy for me, which was really lucky, but that was in the daytime. And she was a big pacifier girl. It's part of the 5 S's. We're not afraid of pacifiers. I know everybody has opinions on them. I think if there's something that can provide soothing and get you through, the first 6 months of life, bless that. There's some data that even shows that sucking on a pacifier can have a decreased correlation with SIDS. So for the haters, it's not that bad.
Right.
It's actually good, maybe. And so I was really into the pacifier, and she wasn't that into it. It was great. Like, it wasn't a problem in the first few years. And then we moved to LA. And it's about 9 months ago, and it's a little bit of a change. And so she suddenly started wanting it in the daytime, not just for sleep.
Okay.
And it was a little harder to take out of her mouth, but my dad made me do it, and he was like, it's time. We have the little passy teeth. And so I was really scared, and he was like, just put them in the bed and tell her they're for bedtime. And like, that's the cool thing about this age, about toddlerhood. I know that you're a little bit behind me, but they understand more than you think. You have to give them more credit.
Yeah.
And so I just reasoned with her. I said, okay, we have a weird name. My husband's German, and there's a long name for pacifier that we like shorten. So I'm like, the Schnoolies are pacifiers. I'm like, the Schnoolies live in the crib. And she's like, okay, took them out. And we put, 6 at a time in there. So they live in the crib. So they're only for bedtime. I do still give it at bedtime, but it's, it's in her mouth for 20 minutes and it falls out. And then she sleeps without it.
Okay.
My goal is probably to take it away, especially with a recent nudge of my dad again for even that falling asleep at night, especially before the baby comes, because like, I don't know what if they take it out of the baby's mouth and put it in. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for a big girl. She'll be 3 before I give birth. So my goal is in the next couple months to like.
I'm excited to hear how that ends.
Yeah.
We are still on Passy, and we don't have it during the day. Occasionally, right? I travel a lot with my daughter, and so definitely on an airplane, for appropriate reasons. Yeah. Mostly my anxiety.
Yeah.
But
your anxiety on the plane, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I have it so bad, and my husband is like, what's wrong with you? But I want to ask you, and for the listeners, is that really for you, or is it your guilt for everybody around you?
It is for everyone around me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I had a really unique experience prior to becoming a mother. I was sitting next to a mom, and it was her son's second flight. He was freaking out, ended up playing with me so much that he's sitting on my lap. She found me on social media and sent me a very long message about how she was on the first flight, had been crying in the bathroom with him. And I think it really changed, my viewpoint of parents and children on flights before becoming a mother, because I do think a lot of even women are not sensitive to that until you have your own, and now you're worried about everyone else.
Yeah.
And so, I'm constantly concerned with the other people, especially for flying first class, Because then I'm like, oh my God, they're
Extra
even
guilty,
more
yeah.
judgmental and they're very mad. This isn't what they paid for.
Yeah. But I feel bad that I didn't want it to take that pause, because I think whenever my husband challenges that, he's like the nicest, most easygoing person. And like, I'm always like, I wish I were like that, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And so he asked me, he's like, you're never going to see these people again. Like, relax. But that's not easy for me. And I think it's probably not easy for other moms. So I wanted to give you a place to like, release the guilt and say, it's not even for us. I don't mind flying on a plane with her. She's a great kid. It's going to be fun.
Right.
It's really like, are they going to be mad? Is she going to cry? Like,
or even the, waving, right? Like we're in the way, like, and she's like wanting to be flirtatious with the other passengers. And most of the time they're always like, oh my God, she's great. She's adorable. We didn't even know a baby was here. But you get the occasional person that's like sleeping and she wants to grab their arm or their book bag. And I'm like, please no.
But that, I think your experience is amazing, and I'm so happy you had that. And it really speaks to what we talk a lot about at Happiest Baby, which is the village. You were someone's village in that flight, and that's incredible. And we've lost that, and not just culturally, but even just with our family, right? I was in New York for 15 years. My parents were in LA, and my husband's parents were in Germany. So we were just like solo, in New York with no crutch, and you no longer have the neighbors. I watched kids like it was the 80s, man. I think back and I'm like, I would not leave my kids with a kid. But there was babysitting. You had the more proximity to your extended family. You had cousins, aunts, whomever,
and they're always together at the house. You did it
together, and this is the really first time in history that we have even our nuclear families are almost broken up, and we have no support, no community, no culture, no village.
Right.
And we're finally talking about it. And I've seen, more memes and hats and things on Instagram in the last year, and pardon my French, but they're like, where's the fucking village? And I'm like, I love that this is happening, because before we had this mentality of grit and bear it. Like everybody else had to suffer, just, bite your lip, suffer quietly, don't complain. And it's hard.
Well, also, too, everyone is looking down on you for getting help, right? I do feel like, the night nurse, staffing, nannies, night nurses, the whole gambit of things, you have this community of women that are like, well, why would you want someone else holding your baby at night? The generation of my mom, to be very specific, she's like, well, when are you going to raise your child?
It's wild.
And I was like, Well,
and you know what's different now is we didn't have women in education and women in the workforce the way that we do now. I think, maybe the only other time women worked so much and were given more equal opportunities was during the war, when the men were all gone in Europe. And, it's like when we watched A League of Our Own as kids, they were even playing baseball. But as soon as the men came back, the paid family leave, the free childcare, all of that went away, and the women went back home.
Yep.
And so now you're a really busy mom with a great career and a brand and a podcast and all these things. And so you can't be in all the places at once.
No. And even as a mom, you're not 100% in any of those things at any time, is at least how I feel, maybe absolutely. As an overachiever. That I'm like, great, everyone got 70% of me today, and I feel like a loser. I go to bed like, just, oh my God, my to-do list. Right.
The best thing, I love stealing I'll be doing this the whole time, so sorry in advance. But
you're fine.
The best quote, one of the ones that I love to steal from my dad, is stop shoulding on yourself.
Yeah.
The shoulds are really hard. I should have given more. I should have been 100. And I think when I do a lot of talking, with corporate environments and other sort of executive moms about work-life balance, like that's such a myth, but that's a whole other tangent. But I think that there's like, you have to just realize like you're not going to be the best person at work or the best person at home, and so you're going to feel double the negativity, the guilt, the shoulding,
right?
And so like we've got to just figure out a way to let it go, and like tomorrow's a new day, you start over and you get a new calculation and a new credit card and a new abacus, whatever you're going to use to do your mental math of guilt. Just like go to sleep and start over.
I love that. Welcome to season 2 of Only Moms, and I can't kick things off without a little treat from my favorites. So if you're new around here, let me fill you in. 4 years ago, with my amazing business partner Kristen Taylor, I co-founded Mom Juice. We're all about keeping the bullshit out of wine, literally. We're gluten-free and vegetarian. We also practice ingredient transparency by putting all of our ingredients on the back of the bottle. I know you might be giggling, but not all wine is vegetarian, okay? So you might just be drinking fish bladder, but that's none of my business. Here's the fun part. As your Only Mom sponsor, I'm here to hook you up with 20% off your next order. Just head over to momjuicewine.com and use promo code ONLYMOMS to go and treat yourself. You deserve it. I know. I love you mentioned your dad. It's a great intersection. So I didn't realize that he was your stepfather.
Yeah. He's been around my whole life. We're very lucky that we're all really close. I was an only child from my biological parents. And so they did a really good job co-parenting, which was very unique in the 80s. People thought we were weird. And then my dad went ahead and got remarried and had 5 more kids.
Wow.
I know. And so my parents, my mom and Harvey, are the godparents to my dad's kids. Like, we went on family vacations together. And now it's really common and popular. And I think there's been so much trending around co-parenting or, conscious uncoupling and all of that. But this was like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And they both understand, they both feel that love and understand the presence of each other does not take away. So there was never any like bad juju. And both dads walked me down the aisle when I was getting married. And Harvey, my stepdad, officiated my wedding. Like, he's just the best human. They don't make them like him anymore.
That's
so
incredible.
I'm very lucky. And then working together all these years has been an additional layer. And now moving back home to be close to them. But yeah, it's really funny. And in fact, now in 2024, in these modern times, I remember there was like a New York Times piece that said like he has no children. And that like really hurt my feelings. I'm more emotional than I thought I would be. And so I wrote a letter to the editor, and they chose not to publish it. But I said, I forget what year it was, but in, whatever modern year, people create families in many different ways. And because he didn't like spawn me does not make him not my father, since I was single digits. Like, wipe my tears, raise me, feed me, drive me to school every morning. He did, because his pediatric practice was very close, a few blocks down from my high school. And I was a young student. So I went to school way young. They didn't have the red shirting and the cutoffs that they did now in the 80s. So I was 16, still senior year of high school.
Wow.
So I couldn't drive. So he literally drove me to school for all of high school every morning. And
oh my gosh.
He was just the best.
I love that dynamic in your family and the respect that you have for him as a father figure. We have 4 kids total. And I always tell everyone, I have 4 kids. 3 of them are my stepchildren. They live with us full time. And I would also be very offended if I saw something like that. But it's coming from the point of view as this motherly human that's doing all the things.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear from your perspective on how you view this as an adult living your whole life with a stepfather that you consider a parent.
Well, and that word sounds evil, like in cartoons and things growing up, it was like the evil stepmother or something bad. And unfortunately, you hear bad stories about step parents or like, abuse or weird things. And so I think it got a negative connotation. So that word is also ick. And also like, my dad lives in Europe as well. So like, Harvey was here with me, like in my house, like in high school, in middle school, and in doing everything with me, through college, like editing papers, doing everything together at work. So like there isn't that step, like there isn't the barrier. So I don't like the word. And, he calls me daughter. I call him dad or stepdad, depending, to like differentiate when I need. But he's definitely my parent. I always say I have 3 parents and they're equal, and he's actually my favorite, which my parents both know, so they're not that offended. But
that's great. Yeah. That's great. A recent interview that I listened to that you had done, you had mentioned your mom and her work ethic and her ability to fundraise and be this, powerhouse of an operator. And I think that your dad gets a lot of this stardom,
street cred.
Yes, he gets so much street cred, and it's incredible to see the person that you've become and you running things and really a powerhouse force in the industry, and growing up with these 2 powerful figures. And oftentimes I wonder, is it nature versus nurture? How much do you think their like being really made you who you are?
I mean, that's so generous. Thank you for the compliment. I always hope to be, half of what they are. He's always been really humble, and he always, that's part of his lesson. When I was in trouble or something growing up, it was like, have humility, like wash the dish. And even though we're like, not a religious family, he would cite the story to me of like Jesus washed the feet of a beggar, and I, as like a scientist atheist, would like roll my eyes. But now at an older age, I realize humility is so important, and I'm seeing such a lack of it in society and culture right now. And so I think his humility and the way that he wants to always give her credit, and the way that they work so well together and have opposite strengths has always been really interesting to me. She's like moves mountains. Anything can. It's the most insane, amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, you just ideate something and it comes to fruition like tomorrow. And then he's more like slow and steady. And so there's just such synergy and complement, kind of like the yin yang situation. And I think certainly I'm assuming some of that must have been biologically in me. And then watching him and learning from him, so much of who I am as a person, even from like stealing CDs. Kids, do you know what those are? Right. Stealing like Joni Mitchell albums and the Beatles and things that I discovered, with him. Certainly there's the nurture element there, and then building the business together and their work ethic. But I think, look, would it be the same if we were building, commercial selling something? I'm not sure. I think what's so grounding for all of us is we go to sleep at night knowing that everything we do every day is trying to save babies' lives. And it's not easy. For startup founders, they're older. Sorry, but they're not spring chickens. If I'm, 40 plus, then they're, even older. And so a couple years ago, this must have been like 4 years ago now, maybe more. Startups can be very grueling. You don't sleep. It's the typical things you hear. Honestly, watching Silicon Valley was hilarious for me at the time, because it's like lockstep. It really is insane. And I scolded them once. I was like, you guys are cutting years off your lives. Like, I'm going to lose my family if you don't chill out and rest and stop working so hard. Why are you doing this? Like, I don't know. It was a conversation. And he looked at me, and I've told this story 80 times, but I've cried pretty much every time I tell it. He looked at me and he really said, I have to save as many babies as I can before I die. And so that is the mission behind the company. That is the ethos behind all of us, our team. And I think that is something that really can drive you when you are saving babies, innocent little babies. It's not just saving lives, but it's like the most delicate and precious and vulnerable lives, especially in communities that are underserved. Black women and children are experiencing much higher rates of maternal and infant death and other issues. The people who need Snoo the most are ones who can't afford it. So he's in DC right now, literally fighting senators, Congress people, the Surgeon General. We're always trying to help get Snoo's covered by Medicaid and do so many things. And I think that's where the work ethic for me has come from. And it's been so long of that kind of drive. It'll be interesting to see what I do next, because after this, I don't know if I could like sell candles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's what, I heard you say before, that you guys are not a company with a mission, but a mission with a company. And it's incredible because, I did own a Snoo. I also didn't know all of the incredible things that you guys are doing. I mean, even in the hospital, what is it? One Snoo, about 4 to 5 labor hours on a nurse. And I think that industry is about 40% staffed right now.
Yeah. So healthcare workers, even before COVID, you may have noticed like nurses are underpaid. They have long hours. They have that 7 to 7 graveyard shift. It's a tough job, and they're going to almost as much school as doctors are. So other healthcare workers besides doctors are suffering, although we've also seen, all of the ways in which doctors also worked really late and suffered. And so the whole industry it's a difficult industry, and it's been really grueling. And then the pandemic hit them even harder than ever. And so putting Snoos in hospitals during COVID, we're now in like 175 plus hospitals, and having one Snoo in one of those hospitals, the nurses' surveys said that one Snoo would reduce 4 to 5 hours of nurse labor, which at a time when the nurses were getting sick and calling in sick and there just weren't any. I gave birth in the pandemic, and like I would push the call button and no one would come for like an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And it was weird and scary times. And so that's been really meaningful, in knowing that we can help in that way. There's so many things happening. I don't want to be heavy, but when we learn, we try to make adjustments in society. And so people were really into baby-friendly hospitals. I don't know if you're familiar. They encourage skin to skin, rooming in. They don't have nurseries. That's great for the babies. It's also terrible for the mothers.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you may have just had a cesarean, or you may have been laboring for 3 days, or, whatever happens, you are now, of course, the skin to skin is great and you're releasing oxytocin and you're learning your latch, and that's all really good and important to do. But you also are now responsible for a human being after that much medical trauma. Really, this is the only time in the universe where the patient is taking care of another patient.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so we're seeing more and more accidents in hospitals now, where the moms are falling asleep with the baby on them in the bed.
Absolutely.
Or they're rolling out and falling down and getting injuries and God forbid even deaths. And so now we're working on Snoos, not just for intermittent use or for babies, kind of experiencing withdrawal from opioids or all the other uses that people are using for the wellness cases of Snoo in hospitals. But, more and more hospitals are placing the bigger orders to room in, because they're realizing that the safety of having Snoo and having that womb-like sensation when they just came out of the womb and they kind of want to go back in, I would assume. So having the sound and the motion and the security and safety on the back. The other thing that I think is really weird that people don't really talk about is like everyone talks about maybe like their kid is special and gifted. Like my kid is not special, but she rolled in the hospital. And that's a thing. I guess it's a reflex or some kind of capability. But she was in that, crummy, like weird
The blanket with the stripes.
Yeah. How is that still owning the market share? It bothers me.
Who owns it? What is that company?
I don't know. Let's
they don't
Google
even have tags.
Yeah. But so that thing, it's already bad. It's hard to swaddle. It doesn't do the folding. It doesn't hold on, even though I know, Harvey's doo-doo wrap down, up on how to swaddle.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten my sleepy because, like mom brain or giving birth, we have a 5-second really safe sleep sack, and I forgot it at home. And so I had to just do the hospital blanket, and I didn't know what to do. And I'm looking at this baby who's like, I don't know, 8 hours old, and she flips over. And I was like, because I know everything that I know about SIDS and rolling and suffocation, I like freaked out.
Of course. And then you're not going to sleep the rest of the time you're in the hospital.
No. And I hate that sentence. Like, sleep when baby sleeps. That sentence is like the meanest, worst sentence ever.
They're crazy for saying that. Two things that have really resonated with me. One, your Very Well family interview when you said, as someone who looks like a bald rat without mascara. And we don't have anything actually to dive in deeper on that statement, but I just wanted you to know when I read that, I was like, we need to be best friends. Also,
I don't even remember saying that, but I say that sentence all the time. So it's true.
I also say, I'm like, well, I look like a naked mole rat today, but I'm going to be on camera. Hi, guys.
Well, I told Macy when I got here that I was at this is also a mom moment. I was literally at my 20-week fetal anomaly scan, and the receptionist said to me 3 times, make sure you have to wear a mask. So I didn't put any makeup on, which I'm glad I didn't, because then I cried of relief when I heard a heartbeat, because you're busy, you work, you forget, you eat really crappy. The irony of your pregnancy cravings and being so sick that the only thing that sounds good is pizza for 3 months when you're trying to grow a brain is like, really, there's something there we've got to be able to fix, right? And then like, I'm really bad at drinking fluids, so I had all the guilt and the shoulds, and so I go in there and I'm like, please have amniotic fluid, because like I drink like 1 glass of water a day, and like please have a heartbeat. And then you heard the heartbeat, and I'm like, chill. It's my 2nd pregnancy. I don't even like know how many weeks. I don't follow along. It's a different time this time. And I like cried of release. So I was like, oh, good thing I didn't do makeup. And then I'm like rushing here. It was really far away. And I parked the car and made sure to put on mascara in the car before I came up here. But I think as women and moms, like, I think there's, especially now that it's like, the last couple years, the young, you look very young, but like the young, like clean girl vibes, where like, yeah, I wish I looked like that without mascara on, but like, sorry, I don't have a filter on my face. Like, and this is reality, people.
The amount of skincare that these children know about and know how to use. I was like, I used Dove soap for the first 20 years of my life.
Me too.
I mean, that was it.
If I'm being really honest, it was actually the first 30-something years. And I just around 34 started buying like expensive face wash.
Yes.
And I'm like, oops, I should have done that earlier.
Same.
But also with pregnancy, like I don't want to read all the things. Like I don't care.
Yeah.
So now I just put on nothing, which is not helping my over 40 skin. But it's too hard. In fact, we actually launched a clean pregnancy guide yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So I'll send it to you if you want to link it to everybody. But it was in collaboration with the Environmental Working Group, which is a great advocacy group and has an amazing app. It's called Healthy Living, and it's free. And I like walk around the supermarket like apping everything, because even the clean brands are really not that clean. And what we're seeing now and learning, my dad and my parents were huge environmentalist my whole life. So we were eating organic in the 80s and, green juice and all the things that are trendy now. But we were also a little bit more careful about plastics, chemicals, toxins, endocrine disruptors. And I'm so happy to be seeing people talking about all these things. But it can also be really overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
And you shouldn't have to be a chemist or a scientist. You're just a person living your life. And so it's harder and harder. And with this information superhighway, like if you Googled something or ChatGPT something, there's like so much outcome.
Yeah.
And I think he was like sort of canceled a few years ago. So I don't know if you're like supposed to whatever quote him, but I loved the Aziz Ansari bit where he was talking about like, this is the generation that Yelps a taco for 45 minutes before you go out. Like imagine what we're Googling. And so like what I loved about Happiest Baby, for example, like I still look up our blog, even though I know it all by heart and work there. Because even if you know stuff going into being a mom, it kind of like, not that it goes in one ear and out the other, but when you're experiencing it, you can kind of forget or you get nervous and you have more questions or whatever it is. And so like, I just want someone to tell me. And that's actually why I loved, back when Goop came out, because I was like, okay, like I trust her. Cool.
Yeah.
Whatever you say. Now it's changed maybe and consumers are realizing that there's, opportunity for editorial to be kind of pay to play and it's different, but for us it's not. And so like, I'm earnestly stoked when I got the content and the editing the stuff for this pregnancy guide, because like I really don't want to read and I just want to put soap on my face and like not know what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's dangerous. It's scary. So
it is. The second thing that you mentioned that really hit home for me is that one of your biggest fears was labor.
Yeah. Is that such a random fear to have like as a teenage kid?
I mean, as a teenage kid, I think definitely you were really
it just sounded like it
preparing
hurt a lot. Like I was just so scared.
I felt like I was for sure gonna die.
In the moment or before leading up to it? Or
in childbirth.
Okay.
I was like, it's over for me. But children, nice knowing you.
See you.
I've got my will ready. Please save this baby. Raise her right.
Yeah.
That my husband's like,
I feel so bad for you in that fear.
Right.
But and also they don't get to say that because they don't know what it's like.
Right.
But for me, that fear stayed. I didn't think I was going to die, but I didn't think I could do it. And so the doctor was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to quit. And she goes, well, in the history of life, no one's quit. Like, we got to get it out. But so I had the fear like my whole life. And I grew up, as I've referenced a few times, in the 80s and 90s. So it was also toxic diet culture in a different time. And so my second biggest fear, which I don't think I say in places that don't feel safe, especially now when there's so much like radical acceptance or body positivity, I didn't grow up in that time. And I'm so excited for it for the younger generations. But it's very hard for us to rewire. And so my second biggest fear was also like gaining all this weight, and how you
and
deal
never
with
losing
that.
it.
Yeah. And just like, it's weird. I feel so weird and different in my body. Like everything is different. And and so having those two fears going in, I knew that like, okay, since I was young, I always thought about it. But then in labor, I was kind of fine. And I got the epidural because of the fear. So like, I'll admit that. I'm very obsessively like in awe with the women who can go natural. I just knew it wasn't for me. I'm very sensitive to pain. And so I feel a lot of pain all the time, like, a headache or like the seam in my socks. Like I just feel things. So it was too much for me. And so even with an epidural, there was a 45-minute period where I had no epidural. It's a long story. And so she said to me, I said, I can't like take this anymore. I was in labor for 1 hour without epidural. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so, and she was like, you can push the button once, like now, but you're gonna have to push now. And I pushed the button and the relief hits right away. But I was so scared and I looked at her and I said, I can't do it. And she was like, yes, you can. And I was like, no, like, no, I'm just going to keep her in.
Right. She's staying.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Everybody has a different reaction. A lot of women have like, earthly experience, like non-earthly experiences or like even orgasmic experiences. And like, I maintain the fear. But then I did it and it was fine. And like, we're all here and it was fine. Yeah. And I think I'm curious to see what a second labor is like. You've had so many. I don't know if yours were different or less traumatizing or you felt better than.
Well, I've actually only had one because my other children are my stepchildren.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So no, and I'm done. this is it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
What happened when you thought you were going to die? You
Well,
didn't.
I actually almost did die.
Oh no.
I had to have blood transfusions. I was hemorrhoiding. So, and when you were talking earlier about, skin to skin and how women can fall asleep, and my baby was on my chest, and I actively was like hemorrhaging, and I thought I was just falling asleep, but I think I was losing some consciousness. I lost so much blood. I couldn't walk for multiple days. And so, yeah, even if my baby were to start to roll off, you
couldn't do anything.
Yeah, it was. And my husband was there.
Yeah.
But no, I did not die. So yes, it was a traumatic. And even afterwards, I think it was traumatic, but I didn't even tell myself or allow myself to process that it was traumatic until recently.
Yeah.
I have a 15-month-old now, and I'm like, oh, maybe that was a little traumatic.
It's so interesting how we do that. And that's, I think, what we do a lot with postpartum stuff too. Mm-hmm. It's like blackout.
Yeah. We were just blacked out during that entire moment. Yeah. No, did you did some hypnotherapy?
I did. I have a great person here in LA, and I was in New York, but I had known of him in LA, and I have so many friends who have had such wonderful success with him. And he wrote a great book called Your Survival Instinct is Killing You, or Our Survival Instinct is Killing Us. I think it's you. Anyway, same thing.
We'll have to link it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the concept is that society evolved, everything has evolved. We live in a different place. We're not in the animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so that evolved much faster than our biological instincts. And so your instinct to survive is what puts you into panic and anxiety, or have fears, or other kind of correlative behaviors, like people have, bad habits or tics or whatever. And so it's that survival instinct that's killing us. And so if we can learn to be calm. And so knowing that I was really afraid, we did a session. It was via Zoom because we were in New York, and my husband came, and when he had me hypnotized, he had my husband like do a little thing, like touch my left shoulder. Oh. But that way there was a correlate behavior, so that then in the hospital, when he would like touch my left shoulder, maybe it would activate that calm sense of where I was. And hypnosis isn't some like crazy woo-woo thing. It's just like meditation. So like I just kind of want to preface that with like, it's not magic, and it's not like the I Love Lucy episodes, where it looks like crazy swirly eyes.
And then came the witchcraft.
Yeah, it's really like, have you ever just had a really good guided meditation where you close your eyes and you really can see the grass and the drop of water on the blade of the grass and the Bambi drinking out of the lake and whatever it is, all those things. And so that's it's just guided meditation. Really, you close your eyes and you get to such a calm space, and then it's really cool to be able to like try to apply that calmness to another situation.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Did you feel like, because you had done the marketing for your Happiest Baby for a while before actually becoming a mother?
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was hard to be that brand voice or speak to the mothers or on behalf of moms before you were a mom?
That's a really interesting question. I think it was different. Before I was advocating for people, and I think that, listen, because of our line of work, 3,600 babies in America alone die in their sleep. That's a crazy number. For some context, and I know these are like ugly things to think of, but these are Vietnam War numbers. These are 9/11 numbers. These are deaths that were waging global political war over. But this is how many babies really die every year, year after year after year. And so because of our work, I've met a lot of those moms and hugged them and cried with them. And so I was advocating for them before. So it never felt difficult to practice safe sleep, or the benefits of keeping babies on their backs, or the importance of, like we do a lot of advocacy, the importance of all of the things, like from mental health support, or paid family leave, or all kinds of other things. That was never hard, but it was different because I think there was a lot of interest in business and working moms and that kind of balance once I had a baby. And also some people were curious about the flip of demoing a product and then using it yourself, which was actually really fun for me. And we actually invented some products. They say that, necessity is the mother of invention. So like in our experience with Lola, we invented some new products at Happiest Baby, which was fun.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, it was never hard, but it was just a totally different focus.
Yeah.
Now I'm also able to advocate from a place of experience.
Which is a fun place to be in.
Yeah.
You come with a different confidence.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And is the goal to be accepted by insurance providers?
Yeah.
Has that always been?
Always. Day one.
Okay.
So The Snoo inception story is amazing. You know, my dad had retired from pediatrics and he was on a speaking circuit. His books were doing really well. And my mom made DVDs out of the books 20 plus years ago. She was really ahead of her time in understanding how people consume digital media. And she was like, your book's great, but people are tired and parents just had a baby and they don't want to read 300 pages. So we're going to make a movie. And they literally gave patients like his cell phone number and they said, call me like if your baby has colic in the middle of the night.
Oh, wow.
And then they would wake up at 3 a.m. and I was, in high school, so it was like still at home. They would wake up when the phone would ring, put their clothes on, grab the cameras, get in the car and go to someone's house and help them learn the 5 S's, swaddling, shushing, sucking, like do all this stuff with them. And then my mom did all the videography and they edited it themselves and we self-distributed on Amazon. And it was like really a family affair and a self-made project. And it was wild because back then, Amazon was how we like got movies and things were on DVD. And so I was printing out to kind of put together an OG press kit. And it was, I'll never forget, it was like 007 Casino Royale, Happiest Baby, Harry Potter. This is like DVD sales.
Oh my gosh.
Then later. So it was super cool to do all of that and witness that together. And so all these years later, he's now retired from pediatrics, giving lectures and trying to talk about decreasing SIDS and child abuse and shaken baby syndrome and all the things that happen when the triggers, even postpartum depression, where the biggest triggers are crying and stress and that kind of a thing. And some heckler in the audience was like, he was talking about, his sentence was actually, if another foreign country were killing 3,600 of our babies, we would wage war. And so someone in the audience goes, you fix it, Carp. And so that night, it was in San Francisco. My parents went to a restaurant. He doodled it on a napkin. I found the napkin now 12 years later recently. And it pretty much looks like how Snoo looks now. And so the goal was to create something that could do the 5 S's for you and help prevent some of these infant sleep deaths by securing babies on their backs. And then working on it, with MIT Media Labs and just, the most famous, amazing product designer, Eve Behar, and making this product real, the immediate second step was, how do we get this into hands of not just like everyone who can get it, but to everyone in every developed nation with access to electricity. So if you have a plug, we're going to try to talk to your government and, get you a Snoo because we really think that it could be life-changing.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. Really, and so we're talking to like Medicaid. We're talking to, we're doing projects with states in Ohio and in Wisconsin, really trying to do everything that we can to help the people who need Snoo most get it for free. And then that moves a little more slowly.
Of course.
We just got that FDA de novo authorization, and that de novo indication means it's the first ever of its kind. There's no precedent. So he really invented something super novel. And
yay! And such a milestone.
Such a milestone. And so just like wildly out of your mind, especially 10, 12 years ago that, there could be a robot taking care of your baby with you.
Yeah.
Helping you and hopefully even saving lives. And so then what we found is actually a lot faster as corporations. So now we have like 100 companies who are offering Snoo as an employee benefit for free. And it's not just like bougie, Google, fancy, whatever. We have factory line workers at Under Armour. We have, bank tellers. We have janitors. Big companies like JP Morgan Chase Bank.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's very exciting.
That's huge in the United States, just what we're up against.
Yeah.
As far as,
everything.
the shit.
Yeah.
Leave and whatnot that everyone offers. But no, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's not just good for the babies and good for the families. It's really even good for the companies. One of the things that is so fantastic is like there's a direct ROI. Like if you're sleeping more, there's all this data. Sleep is so important, right? So there's all this data about sleep helping your immune system and, reducing accidents or even absenteeism or, because when you feel like absolute garbage and you didn't sleep, let alone day after day after day, you're going to call in sick from work or God forbid you're operating heavy machinery. My favorite corporate partner to tell is the National Air Traffic Controllers Association because nobody thinks about them. You don't want them to be tired. And they were one of the earliest ones to offer Snoo. They saw that value for not having tired people, but it also just pays them back in, so many other multitude of ways, from reduced coffee consumption to reduced healthcare costs. So it's like win-win for everyone.
That's incredible. People don't understand lack of sleep.
Oh my God.
It's actual torture.
It is.
And to operate like that every day is, I mean, I truly thought I was experiencing postpartum depression with the amount of breastfeeding and traveling I was doing at the same time, traveling with the baby and the nanny, you know, keeping her on her same time zone. So if we're in LA, she's getting up at 4 a.m. I'm up with her. Nanny comes in at 8. I get ready for work and rock and roll.
Yeah.
Right. And I think after my third full night sleep, I was like, oh no, I was just tired.
Yeah.
I feel great.
No, it's true. And that's part of it. But there's so much more there too. Like there was a study out of Australia that people talk about like drunk driving or, you know, not drinking while you're around your children to make sure that you don't, you know, especially newborns and things, to not have any accidents. But there was a study out of Australia that demonstrated that new parents are so tired that they're essentially the equivalent of drunk. So what the study demonstrated was not quite that, but it was that that if people got 6 hours a night of sleep or less, that was the cognitive and motor skills impairment of being equivalent of being drunk.
Wow.
But what new parent sleeps even 6 hours in a row, right? Like even if you sleep 9 hours in the early days, you're still up every 3 hours to breastfeed or to give a bottle or whatever. And so their sleep is fractured. So they're sleeping certainly less than that. And I think the duration was like 6 days in a row of 6 hours or less was the equivalent of drunk. And we're all supposed to survive like the first 6 months of life. Like, no.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I have one question about, I wanted to know if you were going to bank your cord blood and cord tissue this time around.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. The New York Times just released a piece. I haven't read it yet, but I saw their post on Instagram. This is such an embarrassing sentence. But, you know, it was an expose sort of on the scammy nature of blood banking and tissue banking. And that was really disappointing for me because I have a friend whose baby was 7 months old and was diagnosed with leukemia on a Thursday night, and she died Sunday morning. And leukemia is on the list of things that are treatable with the banked stem cells. So of course it's not a sure thing, and of course there are scientific issues in every medical situation, like, you know, contaminated samples or something like that. But that's not the problem of the company. That's the nature of medicine and how much, if you Google medical malpractice in this country, that's a whole other thing. I love doctors, but they're also very tired and work really hard, and people are human and they make mistakes. And so I think it's a really great thing to do if you can bank it and donate it. Yeah. That's amazing because I've seen a lot of amazing stories where people are saying that within a year of giving birth, they got a phone call that they were saving newborn twins or an XYZ age child after a car accident, or maybe not a car accident, but like whatever it was, some, you know, these tragic stories, and they're contacted and told about their life-saving event. And then the other thing for me is I had a sister-in-law who had MS since she was 17, very early, and she passed away at 33 due to a comorbid complication. And she had 2 little boys, and she did not bank their blood or tissue. And MS is, and other, you know, sort of autoimmune and viral things are on those lists. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I think is interesting and important about it is science is getting better. Yeah. So even if it's not perfect right now, it'll get better and better. And we've seen with IVF, I think there was like an egg, or what is it, an embryo, but something that was frozen for like 30 years, and the embryo like survived and was implanted and worked out. So like we're seeing that kind of cryogenic freezing seems to be, while there are a lot of issues, and we're learning now that, you know, for example, we know that embryos freeze and survive and thaw better than just eggs. And as we saw a huge surge in the last 10 years of people freezing their eggs, that maybe it's not quite the insurance policy that we thought it was. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. And so I think it's a great thing, and I plan on doing it again. And I did it last time, and it was super easy. And the one thing is, like, you know, we're all very organic. And so like I wanted to also make sure that I could delay the cord clamping to get that nutrient. And that's what some of the more naturalistic people are saying, advocating for. They're saying if you bank your blood and tissue, you can't do that, but you can. It's just a slightly shorter duration. So make sure you learn from your provider or from your vendor. Like there's CBR is a good one. That's who I used. And so if they tell you how many seconds you can do it, you just tell your team it's part of your birth plan. Like, you know, please delay the clamping until this many seconds. But then at this time you can bank the blood. So
no, I think that is, I actually ate my placenta. So you can't do both is what I was told. And
Okay.
now I
didn't know that one.
Yeah. And so I'm wishing now that I had done the other.
Yeah, but that's okay. Look, that's what the banks exist for.
Right.
And if more people did it, even if you don't go for, working with a private company and paying them to freeze yours, the more people who donate, it takes 2 seconds. You don't feel anything.
Yeah.
And the more people who donate to the banks, the more there will be opportunities for even people like you who didn't do it, who might need a reserve, and it can come from a stranger.
Right. That's a great point, because I was like, oh my gosh, should I have another baby just for and
Yeah.
like that's not why you
Do
have
it
another
anyway
baby
for other reasons.
Yeah, no.
But yeah. And in other countries, they even do it. They take care of it all for you for free. I don't know what it's like here for a donation, but that's pretty cool.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. But no, that is it. You made a good point. That's kind of eased me, because I'm like, do I do it again just for the cord blood?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I know we're at time. We've had a little scramble this morning, but I wanted to ask about legacy. You know, you're so embedded in this business. You've watched your parents, grow from the DVDs and at home 3 a.m. calls into this household name. What legacy are you hoping to leave behind for your now children?
Plural. Oh my God.
Know.
Am I going to live? That's such a nice question. I think my biggest hope, now I'm going to cry. My biggest hope is to really do everything I can to really support my dad's legacy.
Yeah.
That sentence isn't fluff. If anyone has met Harvey on a plane, at a lecture, he remembers your name. He's the most down-to-earth human being. He had over 10,000 patients before he retired that he had seen, since babies. And I interviewed an intern recently, and she happened to be one of them who moved away. But the man is the realest of the real deals. And that sentence of just hearing, I have to save as many babies as I can before I die. I'm like, okay, me too. I'm going to help him do it.
Yeah.
And I want that. And I want to get Snoo into every household for free, covered by insurance or Medicaid or the government. We're seeing reductions in birth rates in many countries, including the U.S. So, people's biggest fear, maybe ours was childbirth, but other people's, normal people's biggest fear is the exhaustion. And if we can solve for that pain point, because with Snoo, you're getting 1 to 2 extra hours of sleep per night from the first night of use, and we have data to support that with over 114,000 babies, then if we can ensure less exhaustion, then perhaps at scale, we could provide that to be a support for families and to have more babies. So there's so much that we want to do with Snoo, and I want to help him do all of that. 2 years ago, the Senate passed a bill, the Defense Authorization Act, I think it was called, and it was to give military families doula support, because they need it really a lot. And so now we're working on getting Snoos to be a part of that with the Appropriations Committee. And so all of that kind of stuff, I want to make that happen. I want to go to sleep at night knowing that we saved as many babies as we could before we died, and that hopefully, since there are no spring chickens, hopefully that they're still alive. It's interesting to think about your parents' mortality, but hopefully that he's still alive to see that happen, that he did that he changed the world and really did that.
Well, you were a big part of that too.
Thank you. We say that to our team, even the assistants in the office, receptionists, like anybody, like this is a tiny but mighty team of people working every day. Everything you do is trying to save babies' lives. So that's that legacy. And then the other, I think, personal thing is to continue to find work in the future so that I have their motivation and his amazing drive to be tired and old and overworked and still somehow have the best attitude, be young. Like I always laugh with my friends, like 10 years ago, he was on CNN and he like fist bumped Sanjay Gupta as like a 65-year-old white man. Like, so I want to be like them, but I also want to make sure that I continue to pave that path and do more that matters. That, climate is a mess. Our country is a little bit of a hot mess.
We could go down so many rabbit holes.
Water is going to be a commodity. So after this, who knows? When Snoo becomes such a part of the zeitgeist, I mean, it already is, and a household name, but in every household in most countries, and I can, with peace, move on from that accomplishment, then I hope I do more that matters.
Well, Lexi, I'm so excited to watch you do all of those things. I know that you will.
Thank you so much.
All of it. Thank you for being with us today. Can you tell our listeners where to find you? And more specifically, I want them included in this, where they can find the blog.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you guys push out so much great information
Yes.
for parents and moms that
I use it all the time.
Yeah.
And my friends tell me, they'll be like, well, is this normal? They send me a picture.
Yeah.
Like, you know, having a pediatrician for a dad, like the amount of poop he's sent in photos
Yes.
from my friends and I. And they're like, is this normal? Well, the Happiest Baby blog said it was okay. And I was like, great, then we're good.
Right.
So you
Stamp
can
of
go on
approval.
you can go on happiestbaby.com and search any kind of topic, and the blog is there. There's over 50,000 terms that are like the top result Google search words. So anything from like, of course, sleep schedules and feeding and that kind of thing, to baby constipation, baby boners. I didn't know that was a thing until I worked
Wow.
here.
Okay.
Any topic you can think of, we have data there for you. And you can find us on Instagram at happiest_baby, and you can find me at Lexi Vuvu. And that's it for having me.
Yes,
It was
thank
so
you,
nice.
Lexi. Oh,